Hi everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk with Dr. Naveen Agarwal, where each week we talk about a topic related to risk management of medical devices. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, principal and founder at Achieve, where my personal mission is to help you achieve success in risk management. In this episode, I'm joined by Rick Rios, who has over 20 years of experience in the medical device industry and auditing quality management systems. We talk about audits and the best practices related to audits and how you can examine the risk management system as part of a quality management system audit. We talked about this topic as part of a LinkedIn live audio event in front of a live audience. You're about to hear a recording of our conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Rick, welcome again.
Well, thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today and for participating in this conversation. And it's going to be a conversation, basically. A little bit by myself. I'll tell you the good stuff first, okay? I've been happily married for 40 years to the same wonderful woman. We have 4 adult children, 3 girls and a man-child. I have 9 grandchildren, 5 girls and 4 boys, ranging, the oldest is 14 and the youngest is under 1, maybe. Yeah,
Wow.
it's under 1.
Wow.
We live, our family is pretty tight. We do a lot of activities together. My wife and I felt that our lives weren't complicated enough as it is with work and family and stuff, that on February 8th, we cut a puppy. That has thrown a wrench. So I agreed to the puppy. I wanted a dog, but I didn't do my risk impact analysis was not very good.
Wow. We learned as we go.
So, we learned as we go. So none of my FME did not work.
That's funny.
And so, career-wise, though, I'm a degree engineer. I started my career in the nuclear weapons arena. Worked in that field through the Department of Energy, and there's I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but all major countries have a weapons complex, nuclear, and in the case I was in nuclear weapons, which was highly regulated. And at the time that I, fresh out of college, I was allowed to, in that time, they had like an internal intern system in place where the hiring manager asked me, "What do you want to do, Rick?" And he laid all these tiles in front of me: task, quality, regulatory, production, and he said, "Which one do you want to do?" And I was looking at that, and I was fresh out of college. My eyes were wide open, deer in the headlights look. I said, and I said, "You know what? I have no idea. I wouldn't do them all." And he said, "Good," because they just started a systems engineer program, basically. And so I became a systems engineer, was seeing a lot of stuff and things, and a lot of my stuff was in the production arena, and I got to travel the weapons complex. But I did notice something, that the quality assurance people carried a big club back then, and QA was a little difficult, much more, I don't know what I exactly said, but they carried a club.
Uh-huh.
And so I was getting whacked all the time by the QA folks because things weren't working well and fixing stuff. And then through the process, at that time, total quality management was starting. I don't know if you guys remember the TQM process.
Uh-huh.
And I went to a training session, and I fell in love with the idea of total quality management and quality for improvement and stuff. And so I was recruited to the dark side. So I joined the dark side, the quality and regulatory community, and have been in that community for
so Rick,
most of my career.
Did you get a club?
No, I decided I didn't like the idea of the club.
Good.
But I like the idea of being to help people.
Awesome.
And I was trying to be honest with you, I was paddling upstream without a club during my early career, and but I felt we have to treat people correctly. And it's back then it was like, it's not that it was it's the process, not the person. But back then it was the person, not the process. And so that mentality had to change. So I've worked also in the auto sector, the telecommunications sector, aerospace sector. And when I say work, I started my own company, and I worked and audited and moved through different sectors of the industries that I covered, and ended up in medical device industry. Which I've been in this industry for over 15 years now.
Great. And you have done a lot of audits, right, for the last 15, 20 years?
Yeah, we have done. I've done a lot of audits, gap assessments, 9001, 1345, MDSAP, EUMDR. I've done all those audits. I'm considered a lead auditor. I don't work for a registrar or a notified body. The travel schedule for those guys is just unreal. I thought my travel schedule was bad, but those guys' travel schedule's unreal. And I don't want to do that. I could, but I don't. I don't want to do that.
No worries. So, as you know, Rick, audits are big in our industry. We do so many audits every year. So the first question I had in mind for you is, how do you, and you have done it for such a long time that I'm sure you are very good at it, how do you make your auditee feel at ease and comfortable? Because, we, at the end of the day, we are trying to help them. And if we are in a confrontational, have a confrontational tone, that's not going to go very well. So how do you manage to get the environment right?
I think that you have to recognize that, first of all, whether right or wrong, as an external auditor, I come in with credentials, and there is a sense of nervousness with the client sometimes. I know that I will be talking to people who are forward-facing the auditors, but I know that behind them, there's a war room or a back room that's got a bunch of folks trying to stay ahead of me and try to help the forward-facing. And so my idea is to come in and do what we're doing right now, have a conversation, diffuse any of the tension. And you do that through the way you ask the questions, how you frame the questions, and how you phrase the questions. And so, for example, I'm going to use an analogy. You don't come in and ask somebody, a subject matter expert that's in front of you, and you don't come in with a direct punch to the nose with the first question. Meaning that if you do that, the defense shield will go up, and you just lost the conversational piece. So what you want to do as an auditor, you want to throw them what I call, let's just pretend, a beach ball, and let them hit that thing and get a home run.
Oh, I like that.
And then you frame the question, hey, we're talking about risk, and give them this really easy process, right? And then to talk about, and then you come in with a second question, and maybe it's not a beach ball, maybe it's a softball. And then you finally get to what you want to talk about, and you throw them the fastball. Yeah. You don't start off with a fastball. You have this conversation. And the most friendliest word an auditor has to start the conversation is the word how. How does this work? And you let them talk. And how do it work? I have how it works because they gave me a procedure, right? I have the experience. By the way, everybody's quality management system, your medical device is based on basically 1345 or 21 CFR 820. So when I go from company to company, it's the same thing. I'm seeing the same kind of stuff. So I have a lot of experience with what they're talking about. So I don't have to even look at the procedure. I just listen to them to see what they're saying. So it's more listen than talk at the initial.
And the how questions.
So,
and
the how question. Yeah. And the how question and the exploratory questions are really important.
Wonderful. Hey, I know many of you many of you are joining just now. So first of all, welcome to all of you. Today, I'm having a conversation with Rios, who has years of industry experience in med device business as well as other industries. And today we are exploring mostly the conversation about audits. So Rick, I know that, audits generally are not specifically focused on risk management, right? Generally not. Generally, you're looking at the quality management system. But throughout the system, risk is an element, is present. Can you share maybe some example of how you kind of explore this during audits, and something that kind of catches your eye that makes you think like, let me explore the angle about risk. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that for me, and I'm one auditor, one opinion here, right? But for me, I don't want to, when we talk about audits or risk, you can't, I don't want to take out the human element, meaning that we are building medical devices that's going to be used on somebody that we may love or care about or a close associate, and that product has to work. And so I treat my audit as a line of defense to the patient. I want to make sure that the product is safe for intended use and have effective performance. And the way we do that is ensuring that the applicable regulations associated with that organization in the country they're selling are being met. And so I go in with thinking as, hey, if this product is going to be used on somebody I love or care about, what would I be concerned about? And so that's one element of risk, right?
Sure.
And then you get into the technical perspective and you say, okay, what is the classification of risk? Is this device well known in industry? Is it well known technology? Then you would and the classification. So in other words, if a company is building class 1, class 2, class 3 devices, I'm not going to worry about the class 1 or class 2. I'm going after the class 3, the ones that have perceived with a higher risk in the industry. And my random sample is going to be from the class 3 world, because if they can pass a class 3 audit, if you will, saying that loosely that there's no such thing as class 3, but that type of audit, if you will, then class 1 should pass, right?
Right. So
the classification is important.
So it looks like this is how you would actually prepare yourself to go into the audit, prepare, read up a little bit about their products, what they might be working on. But during the audit, as you're having these conversations, can you think of a situation where like something intrigued you from their risk management practices perspective, something that said to you, hey, let me explore how they are practicing risk management to tie all these pieces together so that the devices continue to remain safe and effective?
So first of all, guys, the ISO standard 1345 defines risk in the clarification of concepts, says that risk is in 3 categories: product safety, product performance, and not meeting the regulation.
Yes.
That's how they define risk in the standard.
Yes.
And so we're in there to go look at primarily not meeting the regulation. We don't look at and question data in that sense or how you did the analysis. We look at the results, and it's got to pass common sense, right? But we're looking to make sure that the processes are in place that make sense. Now, in today's world, there's a shift occurring in terms of the audit technique that we are using. Prior to MDSAP, Medical Device Single Audit Program, most audits were done what we would say would be an element-based audit, meaning we would go to the standard or the requirement, do they have that? Check, and then we move on to the next requirement. A higher level audit technique that is being employed now because of MDSAP and the EMD world is something called the risk-based process approach audit, where we're considering risk primarily first and then using it from a process perspective.
Okay.
And so, matter of fact, if you go to the standard, if you look at the requirement, when I say standard in this conversation, it's 1345, okay? If you go to section 4, clause 4, 4.12b, it talks about risk in relationship to the quality management system processes and asks the organization to do some sort of analysis that says of the however many processes you have, 50-something processes that you might have, if you will, which ones have you determined to be at most risk for your organization?
Got it.
And that's one of the requirements. And so we, as an auditors, look at that requirement, or at least I do, say, okay, which one do you guys say was at most risk? And by the way, company to company, there's usually anywhere from 6 to 10. Half of them are usually similar to other companies, right? The same system. And so we start there at where's the risk coming from the quality management system processes? Okay. And so that is slightly different than, say, product safety, product performance, which is tied to 14971, ISO 14971, right? That is slightly different. And so we're looking at it from the process risk of the entire quality management system and its processes. The second part that you have to recognize in the audit is that the auditors are auditing to the word established, or should be, right? And that means that it's got 5 components. It's the word established, for definition, is define, document, implement, maintain, and effectiveness. You define and document your process correctly, the quality system. Have you implemented the processes, and are you maintaining its effectiveness? The hard part is getting to effectiveness in the audit.
Yes.
And so if we don't get to effectiveness, that's a risk issue now. We can tie that to risk.
So that's how you will start building kind of your inquiry
you start
around
building
risk.
Your confidence, right? You start building your confidence. Are the process defined and documented correctly? That's the easy part. You would hope. That's the part from meeting the requirement. What's missing in a lot of procedures, because the procedures, your SOPs define how your processes works, is the linkages, the inputs and outputs, the connectivity, how the processes are connected.
Right.
One of the requirements says that the output of one process is an input to another process. That has to be defined and documented somewhere.
I see.
And if it's not documented, then it's not effective, right? So there's a risk element to it.
So I think it's a key point here is that you are tying your investigation of risk directly to effectiveness. So first you have to judge as an auditor whether what they are showing you is an effective process or not. Is that not right?
Yeah, you're trying to come up with that. And if it's not effective, what's causing it not to be effective?
Got it.
And then you have to determine how big a risk that is, right?
Yes.
Now, not all processes are equal in the quality management system. There are some processes that are really, really important. Risk management, for example, clinical evaluation, process validation, design control, post-market surveillance. Those are really important to the system, and they interact with each other. So the feedback loops have to be done correctly. And when you look at it, while you might be looking at it as individual post-market surveillance, you can't ignore that that's tied to risk or tied to clinical or vice versa. And so you have to look at it as like a subsystem almost.
That is fantastic. Rick, this is so wonderful for you to explain this to all of us and set the stage. So guys, now we are at a point where I think I would like to invite you to participate in this conversation, and feel free to join us. What you have to do is just raise your hand virtually, and you'll be able to do that if you find that small circle next to your profile photo, 3 dots. And if you click on that, you can just request to be invited to this virtual stage. So I want to invite you guys and be a part of this conversation. It doesn't have to be a question. I know all of you have a lot of expertise in audits and medical device. It can be any general comment or insight. We just want it to be very conversational today. So Rick, I want to continue building our conversation. You mentioned a couple of key processes which are critical for the quality system. Is there an example you want to share where a question about effectiveness was kind of top of mind for you, and how you went around understanding whether the process was effective or not?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of simple examples how we look at things from an auditor's perspective, so folks can get a understanding. First of all, I know the people who are listening here are experts, so I'm talking to the experts here. So I'm interested to see how the comments they're going to have in the questions. So so first of all, an audit for me is not linear. When we say we're going to audit the quality management system, we say we're going to take a sample, right? Of the quality management system, sample of processes. That's not a linear process. I want you to imagine it's a weave. It's in and out and weaving through the quality management system and checking different things because how the processes are connected. It's almost chaotic in a sense, right? It's not a straight thing. And so first of all, you have to recognize, okay, if it's going to be a weave, where do I want to start the weave? Right? Where's the starting point? And it might not be the same starting point depending on the type of audit you have, right? For example, I could start the weave at the IFU, information for use, which is a label. It's something that goes within the product, right? Box. And it's a label. And in that label, you pull out this sheets of paper and the print must be it's so small it's hard to read, kind of thing, right? But you're looking for the warnings and cautions.
Yes.
And so you look at the warnings and cautions of that, and you try to understand what is the cautions out there and what's a warning, to get a sense of the type of risk that was not mitigated out. Right?
Yeah.
Those are leftover risks, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? That we have to look at. And then I can go from there, and I can go back to the risk management file to see what they said and make sure those cautions and warnings are in that risk management file.
Okay.
And to see what other risks they mitigated. So that's one start of the weave. If we're looking at, if we have issues with safety issues, I would start at the IFU and reverse engineer it back.
Okay.
To the quality management system.
Got it.
Or another way of looking at risk in the quality management system, I will pull the CAPA log, right? And I will pull up the CAPA log and see how long the type of CAPAs, and see how long the CAPAs are taking to be resolved, right? Because time is now an important factor in CAPA. The idea of the CAPA, for example, is if there is a CAPA associated with a quality management system, that really, using English, that means that something's wrong, something's broken, something's not effective within the quality management system, and they have to fix it.
Got it.
And if that log is greater than 5 months, 6 months, it's like a warning sign to me. It says, well, why is it taking so long? Clearly, some things are going to take longer than others. This is capital equipment, right? But because we have a CAPA that is 6 months or a year or longer, the risk comes from the fact is that at the initial CAPA, there was interim controls placed on the process to allow us to use the process while it's being repaired. In other words, have added additional inspection or additional controls to that process so we can use it. When you go in and ask for an extension, management or the CAPA board are extended. You'll say, yeah, we'll extend the CAPA. You also have to approve and understand that in approving it, that they're also extending those interim controls, and those interim controls may not hold over a long period of time.
Got it. Very interesting. So
you have to look at it from that perspective. So the CAPA, I look at a CAPA that's 18 months old. I mean, that's just like a big red flag.
Yeah.
It says, oh, no. And so I'm checking the interim controls and how many extensions, because if the interim controls are the same as they were at the beginning, then I'm going to start asking questions, right?
Got it. So I think you were describing some signals that you can pick up from
Absolutely.
your early investigation. Now I see Bijan and Roger are requesting to speak. So Roger, you are on stage. I think Bijan, you're on stage. So go ahead first. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for your presentation. I have a question about auditing risk management files. In your experience, when you review benefit risk analysis, which is really subjective, how do you find yourself satisfied with the analysis that the benefit of a device outweighs its risk?
So Bijan, first of all, I'm enjoying your book, and I travel in an RV all the time. That's one of my passions, and it's space limited, but your book made it into my space.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
So there's something that's not talked about a lot in the audit world, and it's not black and white, it's gray. And so during the audit, we are trying to build confidence in the quality management system, that people understand the complexity, people understand what's going on, they understand systems thinking and that kind of stuff. So part of the risk management is while we're looking at the file, which is hard evidence, if you will, we're also interviewing people. And if the people can't explain the file correctly to you, or are not quite sure how to answer some of the questions, that no matter what the file says, I'm having problems with here, because that's audit evidence says, wait a minute, why aren't these folks understanding what they're actually putting down on paper, right? So that's one aspect, is the idea of, I not only have to look at it from the documentation, from audit evidence, I have to look at it from observation, and the interview questions are really, really important. So naturally, when we get to the risk management file, part of that risk management file that we check is got to have a plan and report. So we go after that, those two things in that. In addition to that, Bijan, what we do is that we look, or at least I look at, that risk management file is not a static document or file, right? Over a period of time, they have to somewhere define a document when they're going to review the file for correctness or for completeness, right? Because the product is maturing. Same thing with clinical evaluation, and those are plans and reports that are dynamic. And so I'm looking to see the period of time that they're going to do the reviews, and more importantly, who get the reviews, right? So you then can go to the training perspective of it, or they have the right competence, and by the way, the standard says competence, but if you go click on that word competence, it takes you to the dictionary of the ISO world, 9000-2015. It says applied competence. You should be able to apply it. Yeah. So now that gives you leeway from a question and asking the questions, right? In a way that makes sense.
So what you are saying, Rick, is
that's a setup for going into the risk management.
So they should be able to explain benefit risk in a way that anyone can understand, not what they have written. Right? It should make sense.
And by the way, there was a topic in one of your things, Naveen, that somebody wrote about the idea of looking at clinical benefit, and that's a big important thing. First of all, obviously benefit has got to be greater than risk, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea, that's the concept. But when we talk about benefit, we also have to talk about clinical benefit.
Yes.
So now, here's the thought. If I'm talking about clinical benefit, then and that team that did that, there better be clinicians, right? The fact that you have an engineer doing risk management, you have a production person, you have a quality regulatory, and they're talking about clinical risk and clinical benefit, and none of them have that type of background, then that's a huge risk.
So you will be kind of skeptical about what they are telling you.
Absolutely.
Got it. So and then probably you also want to see how it has evolved. Like that's the point you were trying to make, and I want to emphasize it for everybody. Evolution. Over time, how has it changed so that you can see what updates they have made to their risk management file.
Right. And here's, Bijan, the risk management file, the most important concept from a risk that comes out, well, you have to do that, but one of the concepts that comes out is this idea of the fact that we have this IFU and we have these residual risks or leftover risks that are being cautions and warnings, right? But we're also worried about this idea or concept of emerging risk, right? Now, the risk from a quality management system to help us understand emerging risk comes from the fact is how we are looking at complaint data in the post-market surveillance perspective. So complaint data, and I don't like the word use complaint data. I think it's a misnomer. It should be called clinical experience with our device.
Interesting.
That's what it is.
Interesting.
It should be clinical experiences. And so we should be looking at that differently. And the other thing that comes with complaint data or clinical experience is that it's coming in with the voice of the customer attached to it, which means it's going to be qualitative in nature. And we have to have some sort of algorithm to turn it into quantitative so we can do some sort of analysis, right? So we have to and so when we go out there and do surveys, or we go and we talk to people who are using our devices, we have to ask the question in such a way that we can convert it from qualitative to quantitative so we can do the analysis. And that's the hard part, and then there's where the risk occurs, because we might be getting all this complaint data, but it's not translated we can't use it.
Wow.
From an emerging risk perspective.
I mean, I have so many ideas now popping in and out of my head right now. This is wonderful, and I love this. So we can talk a lot more about this, guys, and as I have always said in the past, we will explore these topics in more detail. So Roger, I know you have been waiting patiently, so I want to invite you now to share what you have in mind.
Okay.
Hey, Roger.
First, hello, Rick, and I can't believe how much I'm enjoying a conversation about audits.
Hey, we're fun people, man.
Yeah.
Funny,
You are. Okay. here's my question. When you mentioned CAPA, that touched the nerve, you've seen a lot of CAPA systems, a lot of companies that you've been in. My question is, it just to bounce it off my ideas, or what do you see is the main root cause of many companies' CAPAs being open for so long?
They can't find the root cause. They don't have the right tool. They're not using the right tool, or they don't have the right people on the project. And then the other thing is the fact that you're going to need somebody that can think outside the box. In other words, it can't be the same. So in other words, we have the left brain, right brain thing, right? Bring some people who are creative into the process. And a lot of times also, Roger, is the fact that we don't have clinicians involved. Because that's the important part. If it's relating to a CAPA that's outside the manufacturing world, it's being a CAPA that a recall, for example, or an adverse event, clearly you have to have clinicians involved, right? Because that's clinical experience happening outside your walls. If it's within production, that's going to be used in a clinical setting, you still need them, but you can probably get away with more easily with those folks in that. I think it's because we don't understand the problem, or we don't have the right tools, or rather have the right competencies for these CAPAs being taking so long. Now, there's a subset in there, Roger, that requires capital equipment, right? And I understand that, so I don't mess with that. And they're using it, and they have to buy something. The process of buying something takes forever, right? It could take forever. So you have to give consideration and understand the entire picture before you start hammering on anybody on that.
Okay, yeah, I understand that, and I was actually, from some of my personal experience, having worked in companies with lots of CAPAs or CAPAs that can't be closed, from my experience, there's been many CAPAs open that were not CAPA worthy, because of a company culture.
Yeah. And I think that's a big issue in some companies, company culture. And the fact that you go in and you see they got a gazillion CAPAs open, that just tells you that their CAPA process is being abused, and some of those CAPAs should not be CAPAs, right? It should be a simple correction, and they're bogging the system, or they're not separating the preventive actions outside that. That's
right.
Another issue.
Fascinating.
So from your, just because we talked about it, and just because I'd like to know, do you see much of that? Do you see many companies that have lots and lots of CAPAs open that, in your experience, should never have been CAPAs in the first place?
Yes. And that is, well, there's a risk associated with it, Roger. The bigger risk is companies who are adverse to CAPAs. That's the bigger risk. I've been to audits and people pushing. So just to be transparent, when I get hired to do an audit, I usually come in to scrub their system prior to having an external auditor come in, like a regulatory or an FDA or a notified body. They're trying to go from get to MDSAP or EMDR. I get hired to scrub the system to make sure they can pass the audit. And in those conversations, I get a lot of pushback because CAPA is a bad thing. They get demoted or they get whacked with a club because they have a CAPA or the work is just too hard. Those are the ones that scare me the most, because that they want to circumvent that process. Well, CAPA does indicate that you have an issue. It's also an improvement aspect. Where it lands in standard, it's just improvement. And a lot of folks, based on culture and the way management treats it, that's not the case. That's the scary part.
Awesome. So I know Ed is also requesting to speak. Ed, welcome. And again, please share what you have in mind.
Hey, Ed.
Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Good.
To follow on with your statement there, the people that now I lost my train of thought. That we were. Oh gosh.
We were talking about CAPA, the risk of CAPA.
Yeah, that people don't, as you said earlier, establish the CAPAs correctly, because as the FDA is moving to the new regulation, we're going to be talking more about the risk-based CAPA, which means that you have to determine the priority based upon risk, And there's a lot of things, as we were saying, that are placed into CAPA that there's no way they belong there. And that's going to come up, I think, more as FDA moves to 13485, because I think you're mentioning that you're doing a lot of 13485 audits, and those are different. And FDA investigators are going to have to be trained on how to approach things differently than the old QSIT model. In fact, I think they're working on a new QSIT manual right now and a training process for their investigators to change their approach here. So we've got a lot to learn.
That.
Yeah, got a lot to
right on that.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of things coming up, and it's going to be an exciting time for us, guys. As always, time flies. That's been just wonderful. And I want to thank Rick, Roger, Bijan, and Ed for participating in this. I appreciate it. I learned a lot of stuff. So many ideas already on my mind. I have taken notes on my paper here, and we'll be exploring some of these topics in more detail in the future. So before we close, I want to just tell you guys a few housekeeping things. Next week, I have actually 2 industry professionals, very experienced industry professionals who have done risk management hands-on, and I'm looking forward to that conversation with them. Announcement will go out soon. Please show up like you always do. If you miss it, I want to remind you that I do record these sessions and share with you in an article on my newsletter. You can find the link to my newsletter on my profile page in LinkedIn. The first link in the featured section will bring you to my newsletter. Consider subscribing so you can receive these recordings. Third thing I want to tell you, many people have asked me, how can I add this event on my calendar? And believe it or not, I did not know this until now, but someone pointed out that as you go in the event on LinkedIn, event page, on the top right, there is actually a drop down which says add to calendar. You can add it to your Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, and you can do that. So this way you will be able to come to this event next week. But even if you don't put it on your calendar, know that every Friday we are going to meet at 11 a.m. Eastern. This is going to be a weekly event, and I love doing it. I love having you participate and engage with me. With that, I want to thank all of you guys again. Once again, Rick, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And
You're welcome.
We'll follow up maybe with a more detailed conversation on this. Bijan, Roger, Ed, appreciate again very much you coming up on stage and contributing to the discussion. With that, guys, all of you have a good weekend ahead, and we will connect once again next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye, everybody. Great, Rick. Thank you.
You're welcome.